I'm Rick Harp. This is your APTN News Brief for Thursday, April 11th. We begin in Manitoba, where the chief of Lake St. Martin has been charged with a number of sex offenses involving a child. Sav Jonesa reports. A note that some of the details to follow are disturbing.
Lake St. Martin Chief Chris Travers has been charged with sexual assault, sexual interference, and possessing and making child pornography. The alleged offenses took place in December of last year. Winnipeg police arrested Travers on February 1st. He was later released. Police say the alleged victim is an elementary school-aged child. Travers has been chief since July of 2022 after serving on council for many years. Last month, a group of elders gave him a letter demanding his resignation. Lake St. Martin is a member of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, as well as the Southern Chiefs organization. Both groups say they don't comment on criminal matters involving chiefs. Last week, Chief Travers asked for an interview with APTN to talk about issues in his First Nation. He mentioned allegations, but wouldn't say what they were. He did say he reached out to the AMC for help.
So I was told I'm on my own. And what I said to AMC was, there's nothing in place for men in the society that are wrongfully accused of anything, and the door was shut on me.
None of the charges against Chief Travers have been proven in court. His next appearance is July 3rd. Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Turning to Canadian wildfires, and with 2023 one of the country's worst seasons on record, the Trudeau government has just announced its plans for this year. Fraser Needham has more.
At the press conference, Minister of Emergency Preparedness Harjit Sajjan says the government is bracing for another challenging wildfire season.
We know that there are several concerning trends. Southern Alberta, British Columbia, and Southern Ontario are facing extreme drought conditions, and we are expecting above normal temperatures all across the country, which is actually leading to early snowmelts. All these elements create conditions for a wildfire season like the last.
Last year, fires raged from coast to coast, leading to the evacuations of First Nations communities in British Columbia, Alberta, and the Northwest Territories. As Minister of Indigenous Services Patty Hajdu points out, many First Nations communities are particularly vulnerable to wildfires.
80% of First Nations communities face risks related to wildfires. 80%. The colonial process of moving Indigenous peoples to remote lands through relocation and dislocation means that many communities are in extremely isolated areas.
This is why the government is taking extra steps to prepare for this wildfire season. This includes $166 million in the upcoming budget to help First Nations plan, prepare, and respond to wildfires. Hajdu also says the government is advancing payments to First Nations communities so they are not left scrambling for compensation after incurring firefighting costs.
These kinds of things for First Nations that have the capacity to pay up front are irritants, but there are many First Nations that just don't have that fiscal capacity to be able to rent equipment or organize a volunteer crew or, have, rapid evacuations if necessary.
Ottawa is also seeking input from First Nations on best practices in combating wildfires through an Indigenous Emergency Management Working Group that met for the first time earlier this year.
So what we're doing right now is to making sure that not only that there's progress, but they're actually part of that conversation and working with the leadership of the Indigenous groups across the country, having regular meetings to making sure, just as we would do with any provincial territorial meeting, is how are we preparing, what is the prevention, how are we doing the recovery.
Government officials say because of climate change, you can expect to see more severe wildfire seasons for years to come. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The Métis Nation of Alberta works to comply with the implications of a ruling against them late last month. Also known as the Otipemisiwak Métis government, they were ordered by a federal judge to change the definition of the words Métis Nation within Alberta as part of their self-government implementation agreement with the federal government. A change in definition pushed for by two other Métis organizations in the province. With more, Chris Stewart.
In 2023, the Métis Nation of Alberta signed the Métis Nation within Alberta Recognition and Self-Government Implementation Agreement with the Federal Crown Indigenous Relations. The agreement says the Métis Nation of Alberta, now called the Otipemisiwak Métis Government of the Métis Nation within Alberta, has the right to self-govern. But two other groups, the Métis Settlements General Council and the Fort McKay Métis Nation, filed suit against the agreement. They alleged that the words Métis Nation within Alberta would include them in this agreement, giving the MNA the ability to represent them in negotiations. On March 28th, a federal justice agreed, saying that the Crown breached its duty to consult all parties. He ordered the agreement to remain in place, but sent it back to the Crown to review. Métis Nation within Alberta must be reworded to include only members of the MNA. Dave Lemouche is the president of the Métis Settlements General Council.
We were very pleased with Justice Gramond that made the decision that validates and reaffirms what the Métis Settlements General Council has always asserted, that we represent our members and our communities, and we have been for many years. We are the only land-based Métis in Canada, and we will continue to do so.
He says there has been communication with the OTPM-Simwak Métis government.
We reached out to Andrea very early on after she got elected, and we had a pretty good meeting, and we tried to build on that relationship, and we'll continue to hopefully reach out and see where our common interests are and continue to build that relationship.
OTPM-Simwak Métis President Andrea Sandmeyer says her group can make changes to ensure only its members are included in the agreement.
It's actually only one chapter that is in question, so that will go back to Canada, and all it is that they want us to look at changing the wording around who are Métis within the Métis Nation of Alberta. And we can easily do that. Our intention all along is that we represent citizens of the Métis Nation of Alberta.
She says they are working on improving relationships with the settlements.
We've met with Dave and Brenda from Métis Settlement General Council. We are working on a memorandum of understanding.
Fort McKay Métis Nation issued a statement earlier saying Métis Nation of Alberta is not our government, does not represent us, and the court agrees. It goes on to say, we trust that the federal government will work directly with us and other Métis communities in terms of Section 35 representation. A spokesperson for Crown Indigenous Relations sent a statement saying the Government of Canada will continue working with all the Métis partners to advance their version of self-determination, promote reconciliation, and build renewed government-to-government relationships. We are currently reviewing the recently released decision. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Thursday, April 11th. I'm Rick Harp.